If you ever find blood on a millionaire's white shirt, run. Claire Bennett remembered her father saying those words when she was 16, long before his company collapsed, long before their family name disappeared from Wall Street like smoke in winter air. But tonight, standing inside the private elevator climbing toward the top floor of Blackwood Tower, she realized she should have listened. The elevator doors slid open with a soft metallic sound, and silence hit her first. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that made your chest tighten before your brain understood why. Manhattan glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, endless rivers of yellow headlights stretching below the storm clouds. Rain tapped softly against the glass 72 stories above Fifth Avenue. Claire stepped forward carefully in her black heels, gripping the silver invitation in her hand. Ethan Blackwood had texted her 3 words exactly 20 minutes ago. Come alone. Urgent. No explanation. No apology for disappearing 3 days earlier after their argument outside the charity gala. No reason for why the most powerful CEO in New York suddenly sounded afraid. Ethan, she called softly. No answer. Her pulse quickened. The penthouse looked different tonight. Darker. One lamp glowed near the marble fireplace, casting long shadows across the expensive furniture. A crystal whiskey glass rested shattered beside the couch. Then she saw him. Ethan stood near the kitchen island, one hand gripping the counter edge, the other pressed against his white dress shirt. Red stained the fabric near his ribs. Not dramatic. Not horrifying. Just enough to make her breath catch. His dark hair was messy like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. The Billionaire every magazine called cold and untouchable suddenly looked exhausted. Human. Dangerous in an entirely different way. Oh my God, Claire whispered, instinctively stepping closer. What happened to you? Ethan looked up slowly. Those gray-blue eyes that once intimidated senators and investors softened the second they landed on her face. You shouldn't be here. You texted me. I know. His voice was rough tonight. Lower than usual. That was a mistake. Claire swallowed hard. Rain crackled against the windows behind her, while thunder rolled somewhere over the Hudson River. She hated how her body still reacted to him after everything she'd learned. Ethan Blackwood, the man connected to her father's downfall. The man she was supposed to hate. The man she couldn't stop thinking about. You vanished for 3 days, she said quietly. Then you call me to a penthouse that looks like a crime scene? A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth despite the tension in his face. You always exaggerate. And you always lie. That landed harder than she expected. Ethan looked away first. Silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Claire noticed his suit jacket tossed across the chair nearby. Something metallic glinted inside the pocket. She moved closer before he could stop her and carefully pulled it free. Her stomach dropped. An FBI badge. Ethan immediately took a step forward. Claire, why do you have this? She asked sharply. Who are you really? Before he could answer, every light in the penthouse suddenly flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness swallowed the room. Claire froze. Outside, half of Manhattan seemed to blink out with them. The city skyline dimmed beneath the storm clouds while distant sirens echoed through the streets below. Emergency backup lights activated seconds later, flooding the penthouse in cold red illumination. Ethan's expression changed instantly. Not fear exactly. Calculation. We need to go. Claire stared at him. What is happening? A loud metallic bang echoed somewhere far below the building. Then another. Not violent. Just wrong. Like heavy security doors slamming shut floor by floor. Ethan crossed the room quickly and grabbed his jacket. Listen to me carefully, he said, stepping close enough that she could smell rain and expensive cologne mixed together. In about 60 seconds, this building is going into full lockdown. Claire's heart hammered. Why? Ethan looked directly into her eyes, and for the first time since she met him, the billionaire looked completely honest. Because someone just found out you're here with me. Then, the penthouse doors began unlocking from the outside. Claire's breath stopped the moment the penthouse doors slowly creaked open from the outside. Ethan moved instantly, stepping in front of her without hesitation. His hand reached for hers in the darkness, warm and firm, and somehow that scared her more than the red stain on his shirt. Ethan Blackwood never touched people unless it mattered. Stay behind me, he said quietly. The emergency lights painted his face crimson as footsteps echoed faintly beyond the doors. Calm footsteps. Unhurried. Whoever stood outside was not panicking. That made it worse. Claire's pulse pounded inside her ears. "Tell me what is happening," she whispered. Ethan did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened as the electronic lock beeped once, twice, then silence again. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly. Claire almost laughed at the question. Trust him? The billionaire connected to the worst years of her life? The man who kept secrets like breathing? And yet he was standing between her and danger without thinking twice. "No," she answered honestly. A flicker of amusement crossed his tired face. "Good. That means you are smarter than I was at your age." Another metallic sound echoed outside the penthouse. Ethan suddenly pulled her backward toward the kitchen hallway. "Come on." Claire stumbled after him in confusion as he led her past the marble counters and expensive wine displays toward what looked like an ordinary wooden wall beside the pantry. Ethan pressed his palm against a hidden panel. A soft click echoed. Then part of the wall slid open. Claire stared in disbelief. "You have a secret tunnel in your apartment? Welcome to billionaire paranoia." Even now, with tension filling the air, his voice carried that dry humor that always caught her off guard. Ethan stepped inside first and motioned for her to follow. The hidden corridor was narrow and dimly lit, lined with steel pipes and concrete walls. It felt nothing like the luxurious penthouse above them. Claire wrapped her arms around herself as they descended a narrow staircase deeper beneath the building. "Ethan," she said carefully, "why would someone lock down an entire skyscraper because of me?" He stopped halfway down the stairs. For a second, he just looked at her, like he was debating how much truth she could handle tonight. "Because you are Claire Bennett. That does not explain anything. Your father used to own one of the most powerful investment firms in Manhattan." "Used to," she snapped. "Before your family destroyed him." Ethan's eyes darkened. "It was not my family." Claire felt anger spark instantly. "Do not do that. Do not stand there pretending the Blackwoods had nothing to do with what happened." "I am not pretending." His voice stayed calm, but she noticed his fingers flex slightly against the railing. Controlled tension. "Your father was investigating something before his company collapsed." Claire frowned. "Investigating what?" Ethan looked away briefly. "Mine." The words hit harder than she expected. Rainwater dripped faintly somewhere in the tunnel, while distant thunder shook the building above them. Claire stared at him, trying to connect the cold billionaire she knew with the exhausted man standing inches away now. "You expect me to believe my father was trying to help you?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "No. I expect you to believe he died because he got too close to the truth." Claire's chest tightened painfully. Her father's face flashed through her mind. The sleepless nights. The newspapers. The whispers. The day he locked himself inside his office and never came back out smiling again. "Stop," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer carefully, his expression softer now. "Claire, there are people who spent 20 years covering this up. They think your father left evidence behind." "What evidence?" Ethan hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. He still was not giving her the whole truth. Claire pulled her hand away from his. "You are still hiding things from me. Because if I tell you everything tonight," he said quietly, "you will never forgive your family again." Before Claire could answer, a loud vibration shook the tunnel walls. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, alarms suddenly began echoing through the building. Ethan's face changed instantly. Focused. Alert. Dangerous again. Then Claire heard voices in the distance behind them. Someone else had found the hidden passage. The voices behind them grew louder with every second, calm and steady against the echoing tunnel walls. Claire's chest tightened as Ethan grabbed her wrist again and pulled her deeper underground. The narrow staircase opened into an abandoned subway platform hidden beneath Blackwood Tower, untouched by the public for decades. Old train tracks disappeared into darkness, while weak emergency lights flickered overhead. Water dripped from rusted pipes somewhere above them. The air smelled cold and metallic. Claire slowed, staring around in disbelief. "This place is real." Ethan released her hand and glanced toward the empty tracks. "My grandfather built escape routes under half the financial district during the Cold War." Of course he did. Despite everything happening, the sarcasm slipped out naturally. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. Then his expression darkened again as another distant sound echoed behind them. Doors opening. Footsteps. Closer now. Claire crossed her arms tightly. "You still have not explained why people are chasing us." Ethan crouched beside an old electrical panel near the tracks and pressed several hidden switches behind the rusted metal cover. Somewhere far down the tunnel, faint lights slowly flickered on one by one. Because somebody thinks your father left evidence with you. Claire stared at him. That is impossible. Is it? Ethan looked up sharply. When your father died, what did he leave behind? Debt. Reporters outside our apartment. A mother who stopped sleeping. Her voice cracked slightly despite herself. That is what he left behind. Ethan stood slowly, watching her with an expression she could not read anymore. Sympathy maybe. Or guilt. Claire, he said carefully. Did he ever give you anything before he died? Anything strange? Claire opened her mouth to say no, then stopped. Her stomach tightened instantly. Ethan noticed. What? She looked away. It was nothing. Claire. She swallowed hard. A week before everything collapsed, my father gave me a key. Ethan went completely still. Even the tension in his shoulders changed. What kind of key? A safety deposit key. His eyes locked onto hers immediately. Where is it? Claire hesitated. The chain around her neck suddenly felt heavier beneath her sweater. She had worn the small silver key for years without understanding why she could never throw it away. Her father had pressed it into her hand the night before federal investigators raided their office. She still remembered his voice trembling. If anyone asks about this, you say you know nothing. Claire, Ethan repeated softly, stepping closer now. Do you still have it? Before she could answer, bright headlights suddenly appeared far down the tunnel. Claire jumped as an old black subway maintenance cart rolled toward them along the tracks. Ethan grabbed her arm immediately and pulled her behind one of the concrete support columns. The vehicle stopped about 50 feet away. Two men stepped out wearing dark coats, speaking quietly to each other. Claire held her breath. Ethan leaned close enough that she could feel the warmth of his voice near her ear. Do not move. Her pulse hammered violently. Who are they? Not the people I wanted finding us first. One of the men lifted a flashlight, slowly scanning the abandoned station. The beam moved across cracked walls, old signs, and rusted rails before inching closer toward their hiding place. Claire's breathing turned shallow. Ethan noticed instantly. Without thinking, he gently touched her hand. Hey, he whispered softly. Look at me. Claire forced herself to meet his eyes. The world around them suddenly felt strangely quiet despite the danger. Red emergency lights reflected faintly across Ethan's face, catching the exhaustion beneath his confident exterior. You are safe, he said calmly. I promise. Claire hated how much she wanted to believe him. Hated how steady her breathing became just hearing his voice. The flashlight beam swept closer. Ethan slowly reached inside his jacket, but instead of fear, Claire noticed something unexpected inside the pocket beside the FBI badge. A folded photograph. Her mother. Claire's entire body froze. The flashlight moved away again just long enough for her to snatch the photo from Ethan's pocket before he could stop her. She unfolded it with trembling fingers beneath the dim red lights. It was old. At least 20 years old. Her mother was smiling beside a younger version of Ethan's father on a yacht somewhere sunny and beautiful. And written across the bottom in faded ink were 4 words that shattered everything Claire thought she knew. For our future family. Claire felt the photograph trembling between her fingers as the dim red emergency lights flickered across her mother's smiling face. The elegant blonde woman she remembered from childhood stood beside Richard Blackwood on the deck of a luxury yacht. Both of them younger, happier, impossibly close. For our future family. The words blurred for a second as Claire's pulse pounded inside her ears. What is this? She whispered. Ethan's expression tightened immediately. Claire, keep your voice down. Answer me. One of the men near the maintenance cart shifted closer, their flashlight beams sweeping across the tunnel walls again. Ethan carefully took Claire's wrist and guided her deeper behind the concrete column. His touch was steady, controlled, but Claire could feel tension beneath it now. Real tension, not the polished billionaire mask he wore at galas and board meetings. Your mother knew my father, Ethan said quietly. That much is true. Claire stared at him in disbelief. You let me spend months hating your family while carrying this around. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly. I was trying to figure out if you already knew. Knew what? Before Ethan could answer, footsteps echoed sharply through the station again. Closer this time. One of the men called out quietly to the other, their voices bouncing against the tunnel walls. Ethan glanced toward the tracks immediately. We need to move. Claire yanked her arm away. No, not until you tell me why my mother is in your pocket. Ethan looked at her for a long second, rainwater dripping faintly from the ceiling around them. The red lights made the exhaustion in his face impossible to hide now. Because she saved my life once. Claire blinked. What? 22 years ago, Ethan said softly. There was a boating accident off Long Island. I was 8 years old. His voice sounded distant now, like he hated remembering it. My father was drunk. There was a storm. I fell overboard. Claire watched him carefully. She had never heard Ethan Blackwood speak about his childhood before. The media painted him as cold, untouchable, almost machine-like. But right now, beneath Manhattan in an abandoned tunnel, he suddenly looked like a man carrying ghosts too heavy to put down. Your mother jumped in after me, he continued quietly. She pulled me out before the Coast Guard arrived. Claire stared down at the photograph again. Her mother looked so alive in it. Warm, fearless. Nothing like the quiet woman she became after her father's company collapsed. Why did she never tell me any of this? Ethan's jaw tightened. Because after that summer, everything between our families fell apart. A loud metallic screech suddenly echoed from deeper in the tunnel. Claire jumped slightly as old track lights flickered farther ahead. Ethan immediately looked toward the sound. Train maintenance line, he murmured. Good. Good. It means we still have one exit left. Claire frowned. One. Ethan gave her a look that answered the question without words. Whatever was happening above them was spreading fast. The men near the cart moved again, scanning the station more aggressively now. One flashlight beam swept dangerously close to their hiding place before drifting away. Ethan leaned closer to Claire, lowering his voice. Listen to me carefully. There is a service tunnel 200 yards ahead that leads under the East River. Claire stared at him. You are joking. I wish I was. Despite the situation, the corner of his mouth twitched faintly again. Claire hated how that tiny expression still affected her. Hated how human he became in moments like this. You really planned escape routes under New York City, she whispered. I told you. Billionaire paranoia. Another loud sound echoed above them. This time, even the tunnel floor vibrated faintly beneath Claire's heels. Ethan's expression darkened immediately. They are locking the outer exits now. Claire folded the photograph carefully, still unable to stop, staring at her mother's handwriting. Ethan, she asked quietly, what exactly did our parents do to each other? For the first time all night, Ethan looked genuinely uncertain. Not afraid, not guarded, just tired. That, he said softly, depends on which version of the story you grew up believing. Then suddenly the overhead lights shut off completely, plunging the station into darkness. Claire inhaled sharply as the flashlight beams near the maintenance cart snapped directly toward them. Darkness swallowed the station so completely that Claire could suddenly hear every small sound around her. Water dripping from old pipes. The distant hum of Manhattan above them. Ethan's breathing beside her, controlled but slightly uneven now. Then the flashlight beams snapped toward their column. Move, Ethan whispered instantly. His hand found hers again in the dark, pulling her forward before she could even react. Claire stumbled after him along the edge of the abandoned tracks while harsh white light swept across the concrete behind them. Somewhere in the station, one of the men shouted something she could not make out. Ethan moved fast despite the blood staining his shirt, guiding her through the darkness like he already knew every inch beneath the city. Claire's heels slipped slightly against the wet concrete. I cannot see anything, she whispered sharply. Ethan slowed just enough to pull a small flashlight from his jacket pocket. A narrow beam flickered on between them, illuminating rusted rails and old maintenance signs covered in dust. Stay close, he said quietly. Claire hated how naturally she obeyed him now. The tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, curving beneath the East River somewhere deep below New York City. The farther they moved from the station, the colder the air became. Claire wrapped her arms tighter around herself while Ethan walked slightly ahead, one hand pressed occasionally against his injured side when he thought she was not looking. You need a hospital, she whispered. I need this night to end first. His voice sounded tired now. Not weak, just exhausted in a way she had never heard before. Claire glanced at him carefully beneath the flashlight glow. Ethan Blackwood always looked perfectly controlled in public. Perfect suits, perfect posture, perfect answers for reporters. But down here, with rainwater dripping from the ceiling onto his dark hair, and his expensive shirt wrinkled beneath streaks of red. He looked painfully real. Human in a way that unsettled her more than his secrets did. "Why did you really text me tonight?" she asked softly. Ethan kept walking for several seconds before answering. "Because they were coming for you. That is not the whole reason." He gave a quiet breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "You notice everything." Claire folded her arms tighter. "Answer me." Ethan finally stopped walking. The flashlight cast shadows across the sharp angles of his face as he turned toward her in the narrow tunnel. 3 days ago, he said carefully, when we fought outside the gala. Claire remembered immediately. The cold rain outside the Plaza Hotel. Her accusing him of destroying her father. Ethan standing silent while cameras flashed nearby. Then him watching her walk away without trying to stop her. "What about it?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. "That was supposed to be the last time I saw you." Claire frowned. "Why?" His expression darkened slightly. "Because I was planning to disappear." Her heartbeat slowed strangely. "Disappear where?" "Witness protection." Claire stared at him in disbelief. "You are serious?" Ethan nodded once. "The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been building a case for years against people connected to both our families." Claire felt the tunnel suddenly seem even colder. "Connected how?" Ethan hesitated again. That hesitation was becoming familiar now. Every truth from him arrived incomplete. Like he was always trying to protect her from the worst part. "Ethan." He exhaled slowly. "Claire, your father and mine were never enemies at the beginning." "Then what were they?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Partners." The word hit her harder than she expected. Claire shook her head immediately. "No. My father hated your family. At the end, yes." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But 20 years ago, they built something together. Something illegal." Claire felt sick suddenly. "You are lying." "I wish I was." Ethan looked genuinely miserable saying it. "Your father tried to leave after people started getting hurt financially. Mine refused." Claire backed away slightly, shaking her head harder now. "No, my father was not a criminal." Ethan's eyes softened instantly. "Claire, good people still make terrible mistakes." For a moment, neither of them moved. The flashlight between them cast soft light across the tunnel walls, while distant thunder rumbled faintly overhead. Then Claire noticed something strange near Ethan's collar. A small silver necklace partially hidden beneath his shirt. Familiar. Her breath caught instantly when he shifted slightly, and the pendant slipped fully into view. Half of a broken compass. Claire's entire body froze. She had the other half. Claire stared at the silver compass hanging against Ethan's chest, her heartbeat suddenly so loud she could barely hear the dripping water around them. The pendant caught the flashlight glow for only a second, but that was enough. She knew every scratch on its surface, every tiny mark along the broken edge, because the other half had been sitting against her own skin for almost 15 years. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. Ethan looked confused at first, then glanced down toward the necklace. His expression changed instantly when he realized what she was staring at. Claire. Slowly, almost cautiously, she reached beneath her sweater and pulled out the thin silver chain hidden there. Ethan's eyes locked onto the second half of the compass the moment it slipped into view. For a second, neither of them spoke. The tunnel suddenly felt impossibly quiet. Claire's father had given her the necklace 2 weeks before his death. She remembered him kneeling beside her bed, exhausted and pale, pressing the broken pendant into her hand like it mattered more than anything else he owned. "One day you will understand why this keeps you safe." She had spent years thinking it was just grief talking. Ethan stepped closer carefully, staring at the matching piece resting against her collarbone. "I have not seen the other half since I was a kid," he said softly. Claire shook her head immediately. No, this does not make sense." Ethan reached for the pendant around his neck, holding the broken edge beside hers. They matched perfectly. Claire's stomach twisted. "My mother gave this to me after the boating accident," Ethan murmured quietly. "She said it belonged to someone important." Claire looked up sharply. "My father gave me mine." Ethan's expression darkened with realization. "Then they were trying to protect us." "From what?" Before Ethan could answer, a distant rumbling echoed through the tunnel behind them. The maintenance cart again. Closer now. Claire instinctively stepped toward Ethan without thinking. He noticed immediately, but said nothing. His thumb brushed lightly against the edge of the compass still resting between their hands. "We need to keep moving," he said quietly. Claire nodded slowly, still struggling to process everything. They walked deeper through the tunnel together, their flashlight beam bouncing across old subway signs and abandoned equipment buried beneath decades of dust. Somewhere far above them, New York City continued like normal. Yellow taxis, crowded restaurants, couples laughing beneath umbrellas in the rain. Meanwhile, beneath the streets, the truth about both their families was slowly unraveling. Claire wrapped her coat tighter as cold air swept through the underground passage. "When did you find out about my father?" she asked softly. Ethan kept his eyes forward. 3 years ago. "And you never told me?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "You hated me after knowing me for 5 minutes. I figured revealing our parents might not improve things." Claire wanted to argue, but part of her knew he was right. The first time they met, she had already decided who Ethan Blackwood was before he even introduced himself. Arrogant billionaire, ruthless businessman, the son of the man who ruined her family. Yet somehow the man walking beside her tonight looked nothing like that version anymore. "You still think your father destroyed mine?" Ethan asked quietly after a long silence. Claire hesitated. "I do not know what to think anymore." Ethan nodded, slightly like he understood better than she realized. "Good, because the truth is uglier than either of us were told." They reached a heavy steel door near the end of the tunnel. Ethan typed a security code into an old keypad hidden beside the frame. The door unlocked with a sharp mechanical click. Warm air rushed toward them instantly. Claire stepped inside and froze. It was not another tunnel. It was an apartment. Small but modern, hidden completely beneath the city. Soft amber lights illuminated dark leather furniture, emergency supplies, computer monitors, and shelves filled with files. A safe house. Ethan closed the steel door behind them and finally exhaled like he had been holding his breath for hours. Claire slowly turned in disbelief. "You have an underground apartment beneath Manhattan." Ethan loosened his tie tiredly. Again, billionaire paranoia. Claire almost smiled despite herself. Almost. Then her eyes landed on the massive wall of photographs across the room. Her father. Ethan's father. Newspaper headlines. Financial records. FBI evidence boards. And at the center of everything, pinned beneath a red circle, was a photograph of Claire's mother stepping out of a black car 6 months ago. Alive. Claire could not breathe. Her eyes locked onto the photograph pinned at the center of the evidence wall, while the room around her seemed to tilt sideways. Her mother stepped out of a black town car wearing a cream-colored coat and dark sunglasses. Her blonde hair shorter than Claire remembered, but unmistakably hers. The timestamp in the corner read 6 months ago. 6 months. Claire's knees nearly gave out beneath her. "No," she whispered. "No, that is not possible." Ethan watched her carefully from across the room, his expression unreadable now. "Claire, my mother died 11 years ago." Her voice cracked sharply. "I buried her." Ethan slowly shook his head. "You buried an empty casket." Silence crashed through the underground apartment. Claire stared at him like she no longer recognized the man standing in front of her. Every memory inside her mind suddenly felt unstable. The funeral, the rain, her father standing frozen beside the grave with hollow eyes, the closed casket because they said the accident made identification impossible, her mother's wedding ring mailed back weeks later inside a velvet envelope. "You are lying," Claire whispered again, but weaker this time. Ethan stepped closer carefully, his movements slow, like approaching someone standing too close to the edge of a building. "I thought she was dead too," he said quietly, "until I found surveillance footage last year." Claire looked back at the photograph. Her mother looked older, tired maybe, but alive. Completely alive. Why would she disappear? Ethan hesitated. Because somebody wanted her gone. Claire shook her head harder now, panic rising beneath her ribs. No, none of this makes sense." She moved toward the evidence wall, scanning dozens of pinned photographs and documents. Financial records. Newspaper headlines. Security camera stills. Names she recognized from Wall Street scandals years ago. At the center of everything were 2 men. Her father and Ethan's father. Younger versions of them shaking hands outside a Manhattan courthouse 22 years earlier. Partners. Ethan was telling the truth. Claire suddenly felt sick. "My father spent years telling me Richard Blackwood destroyed our family," she whispered. Ethan leaned against the desk behind him carefully, exhaustion visible in every line of his face now. "And my father told me yours betrayed him first." Claire turned toward him sharply. "So which one of them lied?" Ethan gave a hollow laugh under his breath. Probably both. The honesty in that answer hurt more than excuses would have. Claire wrapped her arms around herself tightly, trying to steady her breathing. The safe house suddenly felt too warm, too small, too full of ghosts. "Why did you not tell me any of this before?" she asked softly. Ethan looked down at the floor for a moment before answering. "Because the second you became part of this investigation, your life stopped being normal." Claire almost laughed at that. "You think my life has been normal?" Ethan's eyes lifted toward hers again. "No. I think you survived things you should not have had to survive." The gentleness in his voice caught her off guard. Claire looked away immediately before he could see how much it affected her. Ethan moved slowly toward a nearby cabinet and pulled out a small medical kit. "Sit down." Claire frowned. "What? You are shaking." "I am fine." "Claire." That low, calm voice again. Steady enough to make her want to trust him despite every reason not to. Reluctantly, she sat on the edge of the leather couch while Ethan knelt beside the coffee table, opening the kit carefully. Claire noticed him wince slightly as he moved. "You are the one bleeding," she muttered quietly. "Occupational hazard. You say that like it is normal." Ethan glanced up with faint amusement. "You dated a billionaire federal informant. Your definition of normal disappeared months ago." Claire rolled her eyes despite herself, and for one brief second the tension between them softened. Human again. Real. Ethan carefully pressed fresh gauze against his side, his jaw tightening slightly from pain. Claire watched him silently for a moment before finally reaching for the bandage herself. Ethan looked surprised as she took over. "You do not have to do that. You also do not have to keep almost collapsing every 20 minutes. Ethan sat still while Claire carefully secured the bandage beneath the torn edge of his shirt. Her fingers brushed lightly against his skin for only a second, but the air between them shifted instantly. Quiet. Electric. Dangerous in an entirely different way now. Ethan's voice lowered. "You still hate me?" Claire swallowed hard without looking up. "I am trying to decide." Ethan studied her face carefully in the soft amber light. And, before Claire could answer, one of the computer monitors behind them suddenly flickered to life on its own. Both of them turned instantly toward the screen. A live security camera feed appeared. The entrance tunnel beneath the city. And standing directly outside the steel door to the safe house was Claire's mother. Claire stopped breathing the second she saw her mother's face on the security monitor. The grainy black and white footage showed a woman standing alone outside the steel entrance to the safe house tunnel, rainwater dripping from the hem of her cream-colored coat. Older, thinner, but unmistakably her. Claire's fingers slipped from Ethan's bandage as she slowly stood from the couch. "Mom." The word barely left her mouth. Ethan was already moving toward the computer monitors, his expression sharp and unreadable again. "She should not be here." Claire turned toward him instantly. "Open the door." "Claire, wait." "Open the door." Her voice cracked harder this time. Ethan stared at the screen carefully instead of answering. "Something is wrong." Claire looked back toward the monitor. Her mother glanced nervously over her shoulder into the dark tunnel behind her, like she was afraid someone had followed her. Then she looked directly toward the hidden camera. "Please," Claire whispered. "That is my mother." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I know." He pressed several keys on the security console. Another camera angle appeared on screen, showing the tunnel entrance farther back. Empty. No movement. No headlights. No shadows. Just rainwater dripping through the underground passage. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Stay behind me." Before Claire could argue, he unlocked the steel door remotely. A loud mechanical click echoed through the safe house. Claire's pulse pounded violently as the heavy door slowly opened. Her mother stepped inside cautiously, water glistening across her blonde hair beneath the harsh tunnel lights. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Claire stared at the woman she had mourned for over a decade, while every emotion inside her collided at once. Shock, relief, anger, confusion. Her mother's eyes filled instantly with tears. "Claire." That voice shattered her. The same soft voice that used to sing in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. The same voice that disappeared from her life without explanation. Claire crossed the room before she could stop herself. Her mother wrapped her arms around her tightly, trembling as she held her daughter for the first time in 11 years. "Oh my God," Claire whispered against her shoulder. "You are alive." Her mother held her face gently, tears slipping down both of their cheeks now. "I never wanted to leave you." Claire pulled back immediately. Then why did you? The question hung painfully in the room. Her mother looked older up close, exhausted in a way that went deeper than sleepless nights. Ethan stayed near the security monitors silently, watching everything with careful distance. Claire's mother glanced briefly toward him. You look exactly like your father, she said quietly. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. I hear that too often. Claire looked between them in confusion. You know each other? Her mother nodded slowly. I met Ethan years ago. Ethan folded his arms across his chest carefully, still protecting his injured side without realizing it. She contacted me after my father died. Claire stared at him. You knew she was alive this whole time? Not the whole time. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but Claire noticed guilt flicker briefly across his face. Only the last year. Claire stepped away from both of them now, overwhelmed. So everybody knew except me? Claire, her mother began softly. No, Claire shook her head hard. You let me believe you were dead. Tears filled her mother's eyes again. It was the only way to keep you safe. Claire laughed bitterly through the emotion rising in her throat. Apparently everyone in my life loves keeping secrets for my safety. Ethan lowered his eyes slightly at that. Her mother stepped closer carefully. Your father and I made terrible mistakes years ago. What mistakes? Claire asked sharply. What could possibly justify abandoning your daughter? Silence filled the safe house again. The rain outside echoed faintly through the underground tunnel while old fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Finally, her mother looked toward Ethan before speaking. 22 years ago, your father and Richard Blackwood created an offshore investment network. Claire's stomach tightened instantly. Ethan remained completely still beside the monitors. It started legal, her mother continued softly. Then powerful people got involved. Politicians, investors, men who wanted money hidden. Claire felt cold all over again. And my father stayed involved. Her mother closed her eyes briefly. At first, Ethan finally spoke quietly from across the room. Until he tried to leave. Claire looked at him sharply. Ethan met her eyes carefully. That was when everything fell apart. Her mother nodded slowly. Richard Blackwood wanted control of the entire operation. Your father threatened to expose everyone. Claire's voice trembled. So what happened? Her mother's face drained of color. Someone arranged an accident. Silence. Absolute silence. Claire felt her heartbeat slow painfully. What kind of accident? Her mother looked directly at Ethan this time before answering. The same night Ethan fell overboard during the storm, his father was supposed to die too. Claire felt the room go completely still around her. The same night Ethan nearly drowned as a child was not an accident. The same storm her mother once described as the night everything changed suddenly meant something entirely different now. Claire stared at her mother in disbelief while Ethan remained silent near the security monitors, his expression unreadable beneath the dim amber lights. My father tried to kill Richard Blackwood? Claire whispered. No. Her mother answered immediately. Your father tried to stop it. Claire frowned in confusion. Then who arranged it? Her mother hesitated, fear flickering visibly across her face for the first time since entering the safe house. Ethan stepped forward slowly. Tell her the truth. Claire's mother looked between them before speaking quietly. There was another partner. Silence settled heavily inside the underground apartment. Claire felt exhaustion pressing against her chest now, but the answers kept pulling her deeper. Who? Her mother swallowed hard. Senator Daniel Mercer. Ethan's jaw tightened instantly at the name. Claire recognized it immediately too. Mercer was one of the most powerful political figures in New York. Clean reputation. Television interviews. Charity foundations. The kind of man people trusted without question. That is impossible, Claire whispered. Mercer has known our family forever. Exactly, Ethan said quietly. Claire turned toward him. You knew this? Ethan nodded once. My father spent years laundering money through Mercer's network. When your father threatened to expose the operation, Mercer decided both. Families became liabilities. Claire suddenly remembered something her father used to say whenever Mercer appeared on television. Never trust men who smile too perfectly. At the time she thought it was bitterness. Now it sounded like fear. Her mother slowly sat down at the edge of the couch like the memories themselves exhausted her. The boating accident was supposed to eliminate Richard Blackwood, she said softly. But Ethan fell overboard during the storm, and everything went wrong. Claire glanced toward Ethan instinctively. Your father survived. Ethan gave a hollow laugh. Unfortunately for everyone involved. Claire noticed something strange in his voice. Not anger. Pain. You hated him, she realized quietly. Ethan looked away. My father cared more about protecting his empire than protecting people. Claire's mother nodded sadly. Your father was different. He wanted out after that night. Claire felt tears sting her eyes again. For years, she believed her father became weak after the company collapsed. But maybe he had been terrified instead. Then why fake your death? She asked her mother. Why leave me alone? Her mother's eyes filled instantly. Because Mercer believed your father hid financial records before he died. Claire touched the silver key hanging beneath her sweater automatically. Ethan noticed immediately. The safety deposit box, he murmured. Her mother looked at Claire sharply. You still have the key? Claire nodded slowly. Her mother exhaled like she had been holding her breath for 11 years. Your father hid evidence proving Mercer controlled everything. Ethan crossed toward the evidence wall and pulled out an old file folder, including the offshore accounts tied to judges, investors, and political donors. Claire stared at him. And all this time, you were investigating your own family? Ethan's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. Somebody had to finish what your father started. The words settled deeply inside her chest. For the first time tonight, Claire saw the truth clearly. Ethan was never protecting the Blackwood empire. He was trying to destroy the corruption behind it, even if it ruined him too. Suddenly, alarms blared sharply through the safe house. Red warning lights flashed across the walls again. Ethan immediately turned toward the security monitors. His face darkened. No, Claire rushed toward the screens beside him. Multiple black SUVs had appeared above ground near Blackwood Tower. Men in dark coats flooded the surrounding streets while police sirens echoed somewhere beyond the ring. One camera zoomed closer automatically toward a familiar face stepping out of the lead vehicle. Senator Mercer himself. Calm, elegant, smiling slightly beneath a black umbrella. Claire's stomach dropped. He found us. Ethan grabbed his jacket immediately despite the pain in his side. There is still one way out through the river access tunnel. What about the evidence? Claire asked. Ethan looked toward the safety deposit key resting against her chest. That key matters more than anything in this room now. Claire's mother suddenly stood. No, I am done running. Ethan turned sharply. That is not an option tonight. I ran for 11 years, she whispered emotionally. I left my daughter alone because I was afraid. Claire's chest tightened painfully. Her mother looked at her with tears in her eyes. I will not do it again. The alarms continued echoing through the underground apartment while Mercer's convoy moved closer on the monitors above. Ethan stepped toward Claire one last time, his voice lower now. More personal. Whatever happens next, he said quietly, you stay beside me. Claire looked into his gray-blue eyes, realizing somewhere between the lies, the tunnels, and the impossible truths, she had stopped seeing Ethan Blackwood as the enemy a long time ago. Then the power inside the safe house suddenly shut off completely.